guess this is kind of a sort of review of Iron Fist indirectly, because I didn't end up watching all of Iron Fist, which is the only one I haven't watched all of. Otherwise, watched all of Jessica Jones, watched all of Daredevil, watched all of Luke Cage, and I love the hell out of all of them. Even to some extent, I'll even kind of give Iron Fist the benefit of the doubt. It wasn't bad. It wasn't terrible. Constituent parts of the Defenders: Luke Cage, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and Iron Fist. Going through them briefly, Daredevil was really awesome because it was different. It was new and unique, and I hadn't seen a show like that before. It was like a new Netflix show when they were kind of newer. And that was pretty amazing. And now looking back, it's kind of the normal one, because Jessica Jones was very, very different. It was far more of a departure for it, because it was more the psychological aspect. It was more of a detective type drama, where even then, where Daredevil was more a procedural drama that also happened to be, a superhero show. Luke Cage was awesome because, it was far more, more the personal, like a neighborhood look, more of a community type film where we're getting to know all these different people, and interesting in its own right, and things aren't about to blow up the world, which was a very nice touch, because they're just trying to blow up this neighborhood. Focusing small, you don't have to risk the world every single freaking story. It can just be, hey, we're trying to save this neighborhood. The problem with Iron Fist, and I didn't see all of it, I only saw up to a point, it has a problem I want to call forced pacing. And let's get into that. What the hell is forced pacing? Forced pacing is when I have something like a TV show or a movie or an episode of something, and the episode is, say, so long. I have this much time to fill. If I have this much, like way more story, then I'm going to have to scrunch it down, and stuff will either be left out or it will feel very, very fast-paced, like a lot of stuff is being constricted into a much smaller time frame than perhaps would be ideal. Conversely, if I have this much story to tell, but I have this much time to fill, it's going to feel stretched out, and I have to do something clever to kind of fill in that space, either with characterization and background. I actually commented how the new Amazon Tick did that very well, or I just pad it out with a bunch of bullshit, in which case it feels awful and padded out. It feels very light on content. The problem with these Amazon series, it's a problem, it's a limitation of them, is that they have to fit a certain amount of episodes. They're built for a specific frame of time, and it's a lot of time. It's like something like 13 episodes that are more or less an hour long each, something like 40 some minutes to an hour. And I think some episodes are a little over an hour, which is fine, because there are ways to do that. In Daredevil, they did, the second season, they kind of broke it into two distinct storylines and kind of had them interweaving with each other, which wasn't perfect, but it was fine. So you had the Elektra arc, you had the Punisher arc, and they were independent of one another largely. And that was fine. It worked out just fine. I liked it. I liked both arcs. Groovy. The problem with that is, with Iron Fist, it had a lot of space to fill, and I don't think it had enough to fill it with. It wanted to go through the entire backstory of Danny Rand, which wasn't action-filled. It wasn't particularly interesting. Honestly, looking at it, and this is kind of the thing I wanted to talk about, is I thought that with the Defenders, which I believe was only 6 episodes, like half as long as most of the rest of these things, maybe instead of giving Iron Fist its own season, its own series to start, maybe make the Defenders a little bit longer, like maybe 1 or 2 episodes longer, and weave Danny Rand's story into it. Like, start the way they started, like with him on the ground running, and then do flashbacks to explain, where the hell he came from, with the more interesting, motivated parts of the Iron Fist series. Or with the less interesting parts, you just have someone like, so how did you get to this point? It's like, well, this shit happened. And just have him literally just say it out loud. Just explain it and maybe do like kind of a blend of the two, like kind of cuts and narration, or just him narrating, and just whatever. I don't think he had enough story. Like, I saw part of Iron Fist, and then I saw Iron Fist in the Defenders, and I'm like, you didn't do shit. You're still doing this thing. You didn't accomplish any damn thing, sir. And very frustrating. There just wasn't enough interesting stuff. Can you imagine missing the second season of Daredevil? You'd have no idea what's going on. The entire thing with what's her face? Well, first of all, the Punisher, but then with Elektra, a lot of complicated stuff happened. All those characters have a complicated backstory and a fully developed arc. And what these series, I think, always the question, what informs? What informs the story of each of these is that the character in each of the Marvel Netflix series is a focus, a nexus of interesting characters. I mean, look at Daredevil. You've got Foggy, you've got Karen, you've got, in the second season, you've got the Punisher, Elektra, you've got all the villains, and the only thing they have in common, while they do interact with each other when Matt Murdock / Daredevil is not on screen, he's the connecting thing to all of them. They're either talking about him, or they know each other because of him, or they all have to interact with him, so they're meeting up at some other thing. And Iron Fist lacked that. He wasn't a nexus of interesting characters, is what I'm saying. Defender series. Overall, I liked it a lot. And it was very cool to see everyone on screen at the same time. And once again, I thought, just like the Netflix series, Danny Rand, Iron Fist, was kind of the weaker link there. And I think it's for lack of something interesting to have him do. My conceit is that, as I mentioned, I think they should have introduced him in Defenders and gotten enough stuff for him to do that then springboard into his own series if it kind of warranted it, if it got enough fan reaction or whatever. I mean, having him appear in a bunch of other stuff is better than him having his own series, frankly. Because he could be more interesting than he's come across. They've just left him alone to fill a lot of empty space. And that's... You either have to do more with him, or you have to make him connected to other stuff. And they just didn't do enough of that. As far as the rest of the Defenders, I thought it was a little rushed. I thought there was a little too much kung fu punching. I mean, like, too much stuff had to do with kung fu punching, which is fine in Daredevil, because that's what it's all about. And with Luke Cage, his impressive feats of being invulnerable, and that's the funny thing, he's more of passive. He's like just a really good man who gets into these situations, but he's literally bulletproof. So he can trundle into them, help people out, and trundle out without himself being in extraordinary danger. He doesn't fit the ninja fighting thing as well. If I have any complaint about the Defenders, I think there should have been more stuff for them to do, a better variety of stuff. It would have been cooler to have Jessica Jones do more detective-y stuff and have alternately Luke Cage and particularly Matt Murdock kind of helping her out. I mean, everyone can help each other out in different ways. Like when we get into a fight, certainly all these characters are very capable of doing that. When we get into detective-y stuff, something for him to do. Danny Rand can be rich and have connections. Matt Murdock can have connections and have superior senses. Luke Cage is very imposing and he knows a lot of people. A lot of people are friendly to him and like him because he's an awesome guy who's helped them out. There's something for everyone to do. There needed to be a bigger variety of stuff to do. It fell back on kung fu fighting far too often, which fit in with two of the characters. It's probably my other complaint about Iron Fist, getting back to that a little bit, is that it feels less like a Marvel superhero and more like a gritty reboot of Kung Fu: The Legendary Journey, which is fine, which could be actually quite cool. It just wasn't played up that way enough. It ran out of stuff for him to do, so it kept doing the same thing, and then just telling us backstory we didn't care about. It start to run out of stuff, and their villains didn't do enough. The villains weren't as gripping. Sigourney Weaver was great. Everyone was pretty good, but they weren't. They were no Kingpin. They weren't the Kingpin. No one was as interesting as Nobu from the first season of Daredevil, and spoilers from the second season of Daredevil. No one was as interesting as the Purple Man. No one was as interesting like as a Marvel supervillain. Once again, Marvel has a villain problem, which the Netflix series were doing a very good job of correcting. Luke Cage's brother, Diamondback, pardon me. Diamondback, he was a fascinating character. He was interesting. He didn't show up till later, but he was a very interesting character. He was a cool villain. And there were lots of other interesting villains there as well. Cottonmouth was interesting. His sister was interesting. Shades was interesting enough. Some of the side villain characters were kind of once again, they did something. They supported the other characters pretty well. None of the villains in Defenders were that amazing. I mean, they were okay, but we've been introduced to most or all of them previously. Some of them were interesting for a little bit, but they didn't show up for very long. We didn't really have enough time with them to care about them. It wasn't the strongest. And unfortunately, thanks to Iron Fist, it wasn't the weakest, though, but not the strongest. It was not the equal of the other three. The other three series, but it was better than Iron Fist. Oh, the Defenders. What are the odds you'll see it and not like it? That's a good question. The thing is, I think it's got a lot for everyone, but it's going to lean more towards the fans of the particular series. I'm hearing a lot of people they liked Daredevil or Luke Cage, or they didn't really like either of those, but they really liked Jessica Jones. So there's a decent chance you'll be okay with it, because all the characters have pretty prominent roles in it, but flat out not like it. Damn, that's what makes this tricky. I'm going to say only 1 in 4. Just because it's got enough good stuff in it. If you liked any of the other series... In other words, if you're going to get this far and watch the whole thing, odds are it's got something you liked, or else you wouldn't have invested the time in the first place. If you're on the fence, you'll go see it. You'll probably like it. As far as will I see this again? Yeah, actually I will. Definitely. It's short enough, certainly. And nothing really annoyed me, but probably not right away. I'd probably wait at least a month or two. Like when I get into that long stretch of, waiting for The Punisher to come out, I'll probably watch this again, and probably season 2 of Daredevil. And so, there you go. That's it, I'm out.